Hello, this is Oliver, and this is the next video in my ongoing series talking about changes I'd like to see for Endwalker. We'll be talking about my first healer today, Scholar, and to be honest, I've been very disappointed with this class in Shadowbringers. Having mained it in Stormblood, well, the healer changes were not welcome. That being said, we're moving forward, and I have a vision for the healers in Endwalker. They're weighed on 3 different scales, whether they're a regenerative or a barrier healer, whether their abilities are mostly GCD or OGCD based, and whether their damage is personal or more raid utility supportive. Using these 3 different metrics, you can make 4 very unique and different healers. For Scholar, I'd like the options to of course be a barrier healer, an off GCD based, and a more personal DPS based class. So all the changes I'm making today with the class are made to facilitate that. So let's of course start with the remove skills. The first and second skill, which you get at the same time, are Ether Flow and Energy Drain. I don't like these abilities on a number of reasons. Ether Flow makes and conflicts your healing kit, meaning you can only single target heal or AoE heal, and don't really get the option of both. The other 2 healers don't have to make this choice, and I don't think Scholar should have to either. The second reason I'm removing Energy Drain is of how jarring it is. You get Energy Drain at level 18 as an Arcanist, and when you use it, you gain 2 stacks of Ether Flow. You then lose this ability at level 30 as Scholar. You gain it back at level 45, but now it costs Ether Flow to use. This just doesn't make sense to me. At least give it a different animation. The third skill I'd like to remove is Dissipation. This skill just doesn't do what it's supposed to. Your 3 stacks of Ether Flow aren't even boosted by its healing buff, and at most it locks you out of all your fairy skills for its entire duration. I'd rather see a useful skill that I'd like to use all the time be in here. The fourth skill I'd like to see removed is Change Stratagem, which goes in line with my making Scholar a more personal DPS based class. It doesn't really need a DPS supporting move for the raid. It could be perfectly revamped into some sort of damage reduction. Maybe a 20% damage reduction on attacks for 15 seconds every 2 minutes. That's a pretty powerful skill I want at my disposal. Well, 20% is a bit much, maybe 10%. With the remove skills out of the way, let's talk about the re-added skills. This is the part where it becomes more DPS based. The first skill I'd like to re-add is Miasma, preferably with an upgrade to becoming instacast in a shorter duration. This gives the Scholar an extra GCD move to use its powerful off-global pull without having to resort to Ruin 2s, which is a DPS loss instead of a gain. The next skill I'd like to see re-added is of course Energy Drain from level 18 Arcanist. This is re-added along with Fester. You can use these in conjunction with your dots or Ruin 2 to have a gain while using your off-globals to heal, just like how we use Energy Drain now, but not at the expense of your healing. The last skill I'd like to see re-added is Bane, also from the Arcanist kit. This makes the Scholar AoE situation not entirely brainless, and I'll be adding a few more AoE damage skills later. But let's talk about the change skills first. The first being the first healing spell you unlock, Physic. This skill sucks. I'd like to see it be made instant and cost no MP. By making these 2 changes, you give the Scholar an instant healing option GCD, something this kit currently lacks. And by making it free, it means the Scholar can always do their primary job of healing, even if they're completely out of MP. Even with these 2 changes, I would think this skill sees very little use, so even with these buffs, it's not very good. The second skill I like to see changed is Summon Eos and Selene. Summoner at some point got a buff which made their summons free and instant. I don't see why Scholars should get anything less. The third change I'd like to see is I'd like all the ether flow skills to no longer cost ether flow. A scholar should get full access to their kit all the time. It's a powerful kit, and truly giving you access to all of it isn't that much of a buff because all of these abilities had close to a minute cooldown anyways. If you think about using Indom, you could at most use 2 with 1 Etherflow stack, with it Etherflow being on a minute long. But of course, that's not how it works. The most you'll see is an increase in lust rates, which is good because the Scholar's single target healing is a bit lacking. The fourth skill I'd like to see changed is deployment tactics. This skill is sort of situational and hard to use right now because you have to group up, cast an Adlo, have that knocked off by the boss, and probably overheal someone who hasn't taken damage, and then deploy it off someone using another GCD or clipping, which is terrible. I'd rather this just be an off global shield button. It deploys a shield on everyone, and that's that. No healing, but a free shield that stacks with your Sucker or your Constellation is pretty good, and a skill I'd like to see used all the time. The fifth skill I'd like to see changed is Fey Blessing. This minuscule amount of heal for 10 gauge is really sad. I'd rather see it be sort of a regenerative button. You use gauge, and every 10 gauge it pumps out a heal. Just exactly like how its tether works, except, you know, AoE. That would make this skill amazing, and it'd be great to use. Fate Breaker's Dot comes to mind, and well, just a lot of repetitive damage. The sixth skill I like to see changed, and the final one mind you, is Summon Serif and Constellation. I like these to be mapped to one button since you can't use one without the other, and I'd also like Serif to automatically use a Constellation upon entering the field, since that's what I summoned her for in the first place. That just makes the Scholar's kit easier to use and flow a bit better, at least in terms of using this skill. With all those changes out of the way, I'd like to also make a few additions with the level 80 through 90. The first being an Energy Siphon and Pain Flare equivalents, rounding out the Scholar's AoE kit. Another skill I'd like to see is something called Preventative Measures, sort of the opposite of Emergency Tactics, converting your next Sucker or healing potency into an additional shield potency. This is a huge change and a great skill to use, meaning since you have 0 chance of overhealing and can actually use it before an AoE, and get maximum benefits. The next skill I'd like to see added is a Ruin 2 animation upgrade. It kinda stinks how Scholar's still stuck with these old animations. I think it deserves an upgrade instead of a potency upgrade, and nothing more. Which brings me to my last addition. I'd like to see all the healers have sort of an ultimate heal button akin to White Mage's Benediction. I'd like to see an upgrade to Scholar's Excog, to where if the person dies outright before it pops, they don't, and instead have 1 HP and then it pops. I think the 45-second duration on Excog may too long for how broken the skill could be, but for an ultimate skill on a long cooldown, this would be amazing. And with that, I conclude. With these changes, the Scholar becomes an OGCD king, with tons of tools for both healing and DPS. And while I doubt I'll see anything like this, I can dream. Like, comment, and subscribe, talk about why I'm wrong, or if you'd really like to see this Scholar. And then until then,